The following is a presentation of the Pro Wrestling Report, TV and radio. Informative, entertaining, and real since 1998.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Pro Wrestling Report post-show for TNA Sacrifice, which was live tonight on pay-per-view from Orlando, Florida at the Impact Wrestling Zone. Damian Nelson coming to you for the Pro Wrestling Report studios, soon to be joined by David Octavius and Tiberius Hero for discussion on tonight's pay-per-view, which saw several titles defended, but none changing hands. Again, we are going to be taking your phone calls. The number by which you can join the conversation is 347-996-5278. Again, that's 347-996-5278. And we'll get to your phone calls in just a little while towards the middle of the program here on Blog Talk Radio. Also want to welcome everybody in the chat room here on Blog Talk Radio who have been talking for at least the last hour or so about tonight's TNA Sacrifice pay-per-view. We're also going to be going to some of your comments from Twitter. Our Twitter name on Twitter, obviously, is @PWR Show, @PWR Show on Twitter. Hundreds of you reaching out to us tonight during this pay-per-view, and we ask that you do so during the post-show as well. Before we get started, big show coming to 540 ESPN tomorrow night, 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central Time, the Pro Wrestling Report on right after WWE Raw. And you've heard about it. He's been talking about it for a long time. 5/13/11, Elijah Burke, the Pope, the Black Pope, is going to be a part of the Pro Wrestling Report tomorrow night to explain what is going on in his world, including his status with TNA Wrestling. So that's something you definitely don't want to miss. That's going to be live on 540 ESPN tomorrow night and also right here on Blog Talk Radio. Let's talk about the pay-per-view, which started off with the matchup between Mexican America and Inc., a good match that had the crowd into it to start the pay-per-view. During the matchup, Sarita and Rosita getting involved, both of them getting involved, causing Mexican America to win the matchup. Hernandez still strong, Anarquia impressive, Shannon Moore and Jesse Neal a cohesive unit, and still riding the wave of the USA chant from the Impact of a couple of weeks ago, and obviously Jesse Neal, a former war veteran. Good matchup. Mexican America wins in that opening contest for TNA Sacrifice on pay-per-view. Brian Kendrick then took on Robbie E. Robbie E. coming down to the ring with Snooki Kendrick, giving a promo before the matchup that I still don't know what he said exactly, but it was effective because Brian Kendrick is playing this loose cannon kind of character that you don't really know what he's going to do next and that you really can't prepare for, and it's worked extremely well for him, including tonight where he defeated Robbie E. in what I thought was a very, very well done matchup, especially with the mind games and the theatrics that were played early on. David Hero, TNA Sacrifice has gone off the air. Mexican America defeats Inc. Brian Kendrick defeats Robbie E. Your thoughts on those two matchups that opened up the pay-per-view?
Well, you know what? I thought both matches were both fairly solid. Brian Kendrick, like you said, just all over the place with his promo. But it was a nice way of, getting people invested in the Kendrick because he's just such an oddball. The fans are going to get behind him, especially going up against a guy who the fans truly dislike in Robbie E. But the opener of the tag match I thought was very well done. It also shows the continuing dissension between Inc. with Jesse Neal and Shannon Moore, where Shannon was going to go and take out one of the Idas, and Jesse stopped it, and that wound up being their downfall, for them to lose the match. So,
yeah, good point, and I misspoke earlier when I said they performed as a cohesive unit. They performed as a more cohesive unit tonight, however, still not a tag team without issues.
Right, yeah, it's growing pains. I mean, eventually, I hope they don't split these two guys up because I think together they have obviously a unique look, and they can draw some money, and they can be successful. So hopefully, if they just tell the story about how they're going to get better as a team and not just break them up and, start over again.
Exactly. Continuing along in the pay-per-view, TNA Sacrifice, which was tonight, it was for the Knockouts Championship, Mickie James versus Madison Rayne, and if Madison Rayne did not win, Tara would be free. Well, Tara was ordered to stay in the back before the matchup. However, she does make her way down to ringside. Madison Rayne, David Hero, focused a lot on Tara in this matchup, a lot more than she should have, and at that point, it sort of became obvious that she would not be walking out with the Knockouts Championship belt, and that indeed would be the case as Tara gets involved after Madison Rayne grabs the loaded glove from under the ring after the referee took, I believe, the second ref bump in that matchup, came in, tried to use it on Mickie James, not successful. Tara holds on to the glove for a little while, then brings it in and nails Madison Rayne. Mickie James gets the win and retains the TNA Knockouts Championship.
I still think Tara should have helped Madison Rayne retain the title because it just would have made the most sense. Now there's another baby face in the picture. Now it's Tara and Mickie, and you got Velvet. It's like, boy, they just need a couple stronger heels because the Idas really, they don't do anything. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the Idas were integral in the matchup earlier tonight.
Right, but as far as wrestling other knockouts, on and off, they're not an integral part of that. But
right.
I think you always need a strong heel, and with Tara being the veteran, she is the strong heel, would have been the strong heel to help teach some of those younger girls what's going on.
Next matchup was for the X Division Championship, Max Buck versus Kaz. David Hero, I got to say, this is one of the actual lowlights of the pay-per-view, and let me explain why. Max Buck had no business being in that matchup, in that spot, on a pay-per-view for the championship. Now, I'm not knocking his abilities. I'm not knocking what he can do in the ring. I'm not even knocking the match because the second half of the matchup, if you split it in half, the second half of the matchup was actually great. It was very well done. The crowd got into it, especially after Max Buck just about got his head busted open with that power bomb off the apron onto the floor by Kaz. This was a match that saw Kaz retain the X Division Championship, not quite the way you would have had it go, especially given what we talked about on Be the Booker this past Friday on Primetime TV.
Now, when you say the second half of the match was great, is that because they killed each other with all these big finishes that, they couldn't beat each other with?
Yeah. That's why. Now, again, it's a low light because of that. Because, I watched the Ricky the Dragon Steamboat DVD a couple of days ago, and I'm sure you remember, David Hero, because your memory is too good for your own good. When Jake the Snake Roberts DDT'd Steamboat outside the ring, and he sold that injury for weeks, if not months. He didn't wrestle a matchup. That's
right.
The kind of spot where a guy should be out for a couple of weeks. A guy should be out for a couple of years. Call me old school, call me whatever. But now seeing that kind of stuff, and TNA just a few days ago saying that wrestling matters, well, that's the wrestling that a lot of people remember.
Right, but that's also the wrestling that sets up a storyline that would take 6 months to build. I mean, believe me, I'm a big fan of Kaz, and he's done a great job as the X Division champion, but maybe he didn't have to sell those moves quite as well as he should have because Max Buck is that much smaller, maybe didn't have that much power behind him. Mm-hmm. But the fact is, on TV, it still looks like Kaz did his best John Cena impersonation tonight.
Super Kaz?
He kicked out of everything. He really
well,
did.
And I didn't notice that as much as I noticed Max Buck doing it, because the point I made before, Max Buck, they didn't build him enough to be in that role to be believable, and I think the first half of that matchup before he took that bump really showed the weakness in the build for this matchup. I'm not knocking either guy. It's the build of the match.
And just the build of the two guys, the statures, is just so different. I mean, Kaz looked like he was in the ring with a middle school kid. They needed to send out maybe Brother or Amazing Red or even Kendrick out there to even the playing field a little bit, so in the ring it doesn't look like quite such a mismatch.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
There's one thing in wrestling when I book my shows. No matter what match it is, you always want to make it look like it's going to be a fair contest.
Mm-hmm.
And when you send out Max against Kaz, just the size and the maturity of the two guys, it looks one-sided, from the get-go.
We had a couple of comments on Twitter regarding this matchup. Two of them coming from Campbell Andrew, the username on Twitter. Says, TNA never pushed Generation Me before they put Max into singles action. Don't understand that. He's not a strong singles competitor. Why break up Gen Me and push Max? Push Robert Roode instead. He's strong in the ring. And Mike. Comments from Campbell Andrew, a follower on Twitter. And a lot of discussion right now in the chat room. A couple hundred people in the chat room here on Blog Talk Radio talking about that same subject. A match, at the end of the day, David Hero, did it deliver at least an entertaining professional wrestling contest, in your opinion?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you like a car crash, that's what the second half was. I would have rather have. They didn't need so much in that second half of the match. They really didn't, because they still told a pretty good story. But, boy, they just beat each other up way too much.
Next matchup was Abyss versus Crimson. Abyss debuting what I think was new music tonight, David Hero. Fits his character, well done. Abyss obviously also coming to the ring a little lighter, at least a few ounces lighter, without the teeth that RVD kicked out of his mouth a couple of weeks back. How many people can claim that RVD at some point in their time has caused them injury?
I think everyone RVD's worked.
Abyss versus Crimson, David Hero, an okay match at first, a match that got better and better. I think these two men told a story. Abyss grabbing Janice at one point from under the ring. That was obviously thwarted by a spear from Crimson. Abyss hits the splash, but Crimson kicks out. And then Crimson, out of nowhere, with a sky-high power bomb. And at that moment, David Hero, he became, I think, something special in TNA wrestling. You've been singing the praises of Crimson for a while, and tonight he got that win over Abyss that you said in Be the Booker he needed, and he got, and he delivered, maintaining his undefeated streak in TNA wrestling.
Well, he's got a great look, and it's something new, it's something different that obviously Bischoff and Hogan like, and it's like, you know what? Why not see what they can do with him? They've tried everything with everybody else already,
including Abyss.
Abyss has had his run, and Abyss will always be that big monster heel, no matter if he loses every match or not. The only thing that I didn't think was fair to Crimson and Abyss is that they had to follow Kaz and Max Buck, because those two guys used so many big power moves in their match that didn't beat each other.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now you got these two big guys doing big moves, and they can't beat each other. It's like, well, it minimizes the effect of what they were trying to do. But and plus they had to follow, two high flyers, which when the crowd is watching a match where the guys are fast and all over the ring and up and down, and then all of a sudden it comes to a screeching halt. When you have, let's say, Big John Studd versus Hillbilly Jim, is essentially what that match was kind of like. Obviously, Abyss and Crimson are far more athletic than the two, but when you got two big men, that's the kind of match you get. So it's a much slower paced match. But Crimson, he has potential, and you know what? What's cool is that they are giving him an opportunity to see what he can do.
And David Hero, that opportunity has caused me to make a very bold statement here on Post Show on Blog Talk Radio. Are you sitting down? Are you ready for this?
Oh, I'm relaxed. Absolutely.
I'm ready to make an endorsement.
Oh.
The Nelson family and Damian Nelson, the man who has endorsed The Miz and took him to stardom, the man who endorsed Cody Rhodes and took him to stardom, the most recent endorsement, Heath Slater, will be on his way to stardom. I hereby endorse, as a next big thing in wrestling, Crimson from TNA.
And of course, you do that after I pretty much tell you how amazing the guy's going to be. That's fine. Go ahead.
This has nothing to do with you and you do realize you are still losing in the PWR draft. You scored 80 points tonight to my 90. Now you're catching up. You're getting close. You're still at a 70-point deficit, overall 450 to 380, even though I had to give up points to get Morrison. And I didn't even have the Pope. The Pope, not even on the pay-per-view tonight, because you know what he's getting ready for.
Oh, tomorrow night, baby. Daddy.
Pope's going to be on the Pro Wrestling Report on 540 ESPN tomorrow night, 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central. Everybody wants to hear what the Pope has to say, David Hero. That's one thing that's for damn sure. All the internet speculation out there, there's only one group that knows, and that's the Pope and the Pro Wrestling Report, and we're going to bring it to the world tomorrow right here on Blog Talk Radio and on our home station, 540 ESPN. Continuing on the pay-per-view, again, a big move endorsing Chris Crimson. I've never endorsed somebody who hasn't made it, David Hero. Can you at least admit that?
Absolutely.
Until you single-handedly ruin the career of The Miz by selecting him to draft. But be that as it may, the next matchup was for the Tag Team Championships. This put a lot of points on the board for you, David Hero. Beer Money versus the team of Chris Harris and Matt Hardy. Good backstory here, especially between James Storm and Chris Harris, former members of America's Most Wanted, a team that was one of the defining teams of TNA wrestling back in the 2002 to 2006-ish timeline. A good match. However, I was surprised at how little the fans cared about this match, which actually stems another concern generally in the Impact Wrestling Zone on Sunday nights for pay-per-views. You get the diehard TNA audience. I wasn't picking up that vibe from the audience, especially during this matchup tonight, because you would have thought they had been more into this particular matchup for the story that was being told. It impacted the feel of the matchup, and a surprising turn of events, at least from what you said on Be the Booker, Beer Money retaining those tag team championships, defeating Harris and Hardy. Hardy, who walked out on Harris at the end of the matchup.
No, he didn't walk out on him. What happened was Harris got bumped into the corner, and that knocked Matt off the ring apron.
Well, then fine. Then he never came back in. I interpreted it as he left him for dead.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say this. Beer Money did nothing to make Chris Harris look good in the ring tonight.
Because then nothing at all. But should they?
I mean, he didn't get anything. When he walked out, I heard a pin drop, and I was like, wow, Chris Harris didn't get a chance to really even go on the – he didn't go on the mic. They didn't have a promo before the match. Boy, I don't know if that was a favor to bring him back, to maybe get him some indie bookings along the way, but why bring him back to not do anything with him except to send him packing once again? Now, who knows? They may bring him back out on TV this week, or whatnot, but they did not let Chris Harris shine at all during that match.
You don't think the story was worth it? You don't think the story for this matchup was good enough? Okay.
No, because they whipped up the story within 4 days of the pay-per-view.
Right.
There was no true build to it.
We are also on Facebook, facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Report. We got a couple comments on this particular matchup. One coming from Luke Henderson, who's saying Braden Walker, who was Chris Harris' name in WWE when he was there for about a cup of coffee. Braden Walker is defeated. This is a sad day. R.J. Brooks saying, that's okay. Chris Harris has a wildcat to lick his wounds. LOL.
Yes, he does.
Stephen Guttrow follows that up with
he's still a world champion as far as I'm concerned. I mean, anyone that gets to go home with SoCal Val, world champion.
Next matchup was AJ Styles versus Tommy Dreamer. David Hero, we're not going to give this one too much time. Why don't we just talk about what the population had to say about this matchup? We had a lot of comments on Twitter about it.
Hold on. First of all, anyone that knows that this is a no disqualification match, and Bubba Ray Dudley has yet to be on the show, had to have known that Dreamer was going to beat AJ Styles with the help of Bubba Ray just to keep more heat on Bubba Ray. I mean, come on. It was obvious.
And Bubba Ray, in my opinion, was a highlight tonight. That backstage interview he did with JB, who was apparently seemingly moving further and further down the food chain in TNA wrestling, handling the backstage interviewing duties, which he did well, by the way. But oh baby, ooh la la, as you would say. How much better is it having Christy Hemme as the ring announcer for TNA?
Oh, my goodness. Christy Hemme is, you know what? She does a fabulous, tremendous job. She really
everything
does.
She's done. At everything she's done. Every challenge that's been in front of her, whether it be the backstage interviewing, whether it be wrestling, whether it be the Diva Search thing, whether it be now this ring announcing thing, she's been superb. A couple of comments, as I said. Oh, go ahead.
No. I'm just saying, I found it funny how JB was channeling his inner Michael Cole / Heidenreich tonight.
Yeah. Well, A couple of comments, as I said, on Twitter about this particular matchup. Tommy Dreamer beating AJ Styles. Real Milos saying, yeah, let's have Tommy Dreamer beat AJ Styles. Way to push new stars. Charles Petrus, in response to the match results, saying, you have to be joking. They put this loser and nobody over the face of the product. I can't believe AJ Styles jobbed to this guy. I am Gloricio.
Whoa. Hold on a second. He didn't job. A job is, like a clean pinfall. I mean, it was a screw job finish. Listen, you know what? We sat there and we do criticize how they don't make a storyline worth it. Well, they're kind of doing the Jake Roberts, Ricky Steamboat storyline with AJ and Bubba. They're doing a pretty good job of keeping these two guys separated from each other. They really haven't had that match yet, have they?
They have not, and a lot of people did point that out, saying that if this was a way to simply get to the end game between Bully Ray and AJ Styles, then it's worth it, then it makes sense.
And that's what they're going to do. It'll end up at Slammiversary. That's where it's going to end.
I am Glorioso. Final comment on Twitter referenced this matchup saying AJ Styles should be main eventing WrestleManias, and he's losing to Tommy Dreamer. So some passionate comments on Twitter. Again, our Twitter name at PWR Show. If you're listening on Blog Talk Radio Live on Sunday night, I want to make sure you follow the show so you never miss an episode, including tomorrow night when the Pope joins us live.
Daddy.
Elijah Burke is going to be with us live, granting us his first interview since his big announcement that really still has a lot of questions attached to it of this past Friday. Next matchup, David Hero, was probably the most exciting match on the card, not for the match content, but for the reaction that China got. The Impact Zone was big time into China, and China looked dang good, especially in her patriotic outfit, and especially delivering that pedigree to Karen Jarrett. 1, 2, 3. I'm sorry, the tap out by Karen Jarrett and Jeff Jarrett with the double ankle locks by Angle and China. They win, and this one, maybe we've seen the end of this long feud that really, I think TNA has done a good job putting together, selling, developing, and aside from the whole personal issues that may or may not need to be involved with it, it's been a great ride.
If they really wanted to get under Vinnie Mac's skin, they have China give Karen the pedigree and Karen kicks out. That would have been funny, but boy, I tell you, tonight, they used Randy Orton's DDT through the ropes, I think, at least twice.
That's his now?
Pedigree. What?
That's his now? He owns that exclusively?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely he does. That's his gimmick. Cool, You know what I mean. It's
yes,
like
I know what you mean.
They're too concerned about taking petty shots against the, WWE and talk about wrestling and everything else than worrying about how everything else is coming across. But you know what, though? China, the fans they went nuts for her. They really did. And Kurt Angle looked like he was having fun tonight.
Absolutely.
Which you haven't seen him like that in quite a while.
Which leads me to believe this thing probably is over then, huh? Should they use China? Should they use China again?
How?
It's tricky. It's very tricky. It's very tricky because
I don't think they can, because she was the most dominant knockout, and she's not even in the top 3 or 4 right now.
Right.
If she were to go full time. So I just can't imagine her coming in and taking over, and then the other girls being okay with that.
Karen Angle attempts to fake an injury. Mick Foley comes out representing the network saying that unless Karen Jarrett is now a 6'6" tall black man, then the X-rays had been faked and that she would have to perform. And perform she did. I thought these four did a great job telling an amazing story, building emotion from the audience that was there, and delivering a good exhibition tonight on pay-per-view.
It was great cat and mouse until it was time for the cat to catch the mouse. And they did. They you know what? Karen Jarrett was put in a great spot because she was in the ring with 3 pros that understand the business, understand how to tell a story. So that's how Karen was able to shine. And you know what? She didn't do much, but what was asked of her, she did very well.
Absolutely. And on Twitter, a lot of discussion about that, including one comment from a person who was live in the Impact Wrestling Zone, username DDDJDLUX, saying that China is over hardcore. It's shocking. CM Rob George saying, you guys were on to something when you said if Karen could work, she would be the best woman in wrestling. She is entertaining. And Chad Schultz 2004 saying, I'm sad to say that mixed tag actually entertained me. I wouldn't mind seeing a Chyna and Tara match when Chyna gets ring rust off. Did you see ring rust, David? I mean, ring rust that took away from anything that we saw tonight?
You know what? She really wasn't given much to do.
Right.
It was kind of hard to see. She didn't really truly work a match. In the spots she did was with Karen, who's never been in the ring before. So,
right.
I mean, everything was passable from that point of view.
Final matchup, the main event: Sting versus Rob Van Dam for the World Heavyweight Championship. Ken Anderson was on commentary at the booth with Mike Tenay and Taz.
5 points, by the way, 5 points.
Exactly, you needed him. Sting retains the TNA World Heavyweight Championship in a match that, David Hero, I got to say, was nothing really special.
You know what? It was kind of flat. I mean, but it's Sting and Rob Van Dam, two extremely different styles of wrestlers, and I guess it worked for what they were trying to do. I mean, it wasn't anything great, but boy, I can't think of the last time I've seen RVD's shoulders down for a 3 count in a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
very good point.
And that's the price you pay when you have 2 strong baby faces. One has to lay down like that, because Sting's not going to pull the tights. RVD, he's the number 2 baby face, I guess you could say, because Ken Anderson is like the tweener right now. But yeah, that's the kind of match you're going to get out of those 2 guys.
Just about 3 minutes remaining here in the show. David Hero, overall, your thoughts on tonight's TNA Sacrifice on pay-per-view?
You know what? I liked it. It wasn't as good as Lockdown for me, but I thought that, they did a good job. Some of the things I didn't really agree with, but overall, it was worth the $35.
Was it worth $35? You said yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Karen Angle's on the show. She's worth $35.
And Christy Hemme.
Absolutely. See, there you go. Now we're at 35 and change. It's only worth it.
We are going to be live again tomorrow night on 540 ESPN. The Pope, Elijah Burke, will be our guest.
Are you going to keep your boy in check?
Absolutely, it'll be fine. We're going to do the post-interview or the pre-interview tomorrow morning, so I can make sure, and I'll call you immediately after to make sure you know what your boundaries are, because I don't need another incident. But we're going to be happy to have Elijah Burke on tomorrow night, 10 o'clock Central Standard Time, streaming live right here on Blog Talk Radio and ESPNMilwaukee.com. Also, we've got a lot of.
Hey, you know what?
What's that?
This is going to affect your team.
It is, but
whatever he does, yeah.
I've got the draft MVP, Sting, with 85 total points.
Yeah.
You've got number 2, John Cena, with 75 total points.
Mm-hmm.
Winning.
Yep, and I still have one more pay-per-view this month.
Ashton Kutcher is not going to replace me. Let me just tell you that, but I am winning.
Okay.
A couple of final comments from the pay-per-view tonight from the Twitter world. In summary, Yonky Kong saying, I really enjoyed the show. Good stuff from TNA tonight. Wrestlers have busted their asses tonight. Charles Petrus saying, is it just me or does TNA Wrestling not have those exciting endings to a pay-per-view? It ended like it was no big deal. DPW Bally saying TNA pay-per-view does not get a pass for me. However, the show does not fail, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10. New Era 760 user on Twitter saying definitely a passing grade tonight. Great show, some quality wrestling. Crowd was hot in the latter half and well worth the money. So a lot of your comments and a lot more comments for you to read and converse about on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Report, facebook.com/Pro Wrestling Report. I want to thank David Hero for joining us. I want to remind all of you that we will be live tomorrow night. More discussion on TNA Sacrifice, and the Pope, D'Angelo De Niro, Elijah Burke. He will speak out and let everybody know what is going on in his life and in his world and what the announcement on May 13th, 11 really meant. That's tomorrow night live on 540 ESPN, streaming live right here on Blog Talk Radio as well. Until then, in the meantime and in between time, visit us at pwrshow.com. Follow us on Twitter at PWRShow. Follow the show here on Blog Talk Radio so you never miss an episode, including the Pope tomorrow night. For David Hero, this is Damian Nelson. Thank you so much for joining us here on the post show for TNA Sacrifice from the Pro Wrestling Report.